Want to take a look at what happened in the stock market today? We saw some big selling in QQQ ETF, and I want to break this down. Dow, of course, went up, the old tried and true, which weren't really exactly overbought as much as holdings within QQQ ETF. What happened? NVIDIA sold off sharply. Some AI products came out last week out of China. And the two bullet points I got some really nerdy friends who kind of broke things down for me, the ins and outs on this. Stanford did something over the summer that just seemed to kind of go over underneath the radar, and it shouldn't have. Now, coupled along with what we saw last week with DeepSeek, there's a lot of competition that's going to be using a lot less resources, specifically energy, and this is calling into question the big moves in NVIDIA stock upward. Now, I've done some videos on NVIDIA before NVDA stock, and NVDA stock, in my opinion, has always been overvalued. I felt as if the market was too far ahead. Regardless, NVDA stock continued to push. One of the reasons, they continued to increase their revenues. When you look at the revenues, you're like, wow, okay, no, so that was wrong. They exceeded that. Oh, they exceeded it again. Now that's being called into question. NVIDIA stock itself, from a valuation perspective, one of the things they're looking at is you're likely to see less revenues on a percentage basis. The gains aren't going to be as much. NVIDIA is selling off at least 15% at one point. This still in the market is trading right now, so I don't know exactly where it's going to finish off, but NVIDIA stock is down. This pulled QQQ ETF down. Now, if you are looking for an inverse ETF trading strategy, SQQQ would be one to get involved in, and I'll kind of break something down with that as well if you believe this is overdone. Now, I'm also going to look at Apple stock, Google, Meta, and Amazon. These sort of outperformed. This was all about NVIDIA. It was such a sharp move downward that it pulled QQQ down as much as it did. Let me break down each of these stocks so you can get a good idea as to what's going on there, what I think is going to happen. I have made a few videos on AI themselves. One of the things that I looked at with AI is there's three phases of this. I'll break that down. Let's jump into and look at some charts. Here we're looking at QQQ ETF. Now, QQQ ETF there's about 101 holdings within QQQ ETF. A great way to trade the NASDAQ, simplified form of it. Of course, the bigger holdings really kind of push QQQ ETF so much. And as you can see, down, I think we saw moves downward of about 15%. Let's move forward real quick so you can see where the damage came from. NVIDIA stock, this is the 1 hour bar chart. Just seems like it wants to just keep going, hitting 118 and probably going to just keep going from there. Again, this is driven from DeepSeek, which the software was released last week, and it's the #1 app download all weekend long. This one's really hitting hard. Far more energy efficient, using inferior NVIDIA cards. Those are your two big bullet points. So when you start asking that and you look at all the ramp up we've seen, and the fact that LLM, which is a processing system within that isn't necessarily going to be needed to be used, this is something that Stanford released. And again, this came out real quietly. I think it was in August that I started reading up on that. NVIDIA's people are always going to want more and more power, but they're not necessarily going to need as much based on what DeepSeek has just proven. Now, DeepSeek, they need to ramp up significantly before they become, say, a serious competitor, but it shows the power of what's kind of next, that you don't need more and more and more power. You can do things efficiently, and that's what rocked NVIDIA stock as much as it did, bringing down QQQ stock as much as it did. Now, again, Dow went up today. The tried and true, because a lot of what we've seen has been driven growth, and now all of a sudden that growth might not be there. There's 3 phases to this. First, you have to build your infrastructure. Everybody's going to be buying up these NVIDIA cards, all right? The second phase is building up the software to run it. Then the third phase, is building up the software and also the cloud systems in order to service customers. Then, of course, individuals using those services. So those 3 phases, we're seeing a big ramp up, and this is what's really pushing NVIDIA. Now, of course, NVIDIA is just going to keep building better and better cards, but now they have to do things more efficiently, and that was what really kind of shook everything. AI in general, I think DeepSeek is a long way away from being a serious competitor versus ChatGPT, but they did everything off of just a couple $1,000,000, and this is a system that will easily ramp up quickly, and all of a sudden ChatGPT is going to have, or ChatGPT, my apologies, is going to have some serious competition nipping on them real fast. So you have to kind of look at the entire picture from that angle. Apple stock. This is sort of these companies that did move up higher. It's sort of like, okay, you can win little victories. Meta was another one that did this. Someone else's loss is someone else's gain kind of thing. Apple, Meta, they're all investing heavily in this, of course, and you're going to see a lot more return from this. And I think investors are kind of looking at that and saying, listen, less input, more results. And that's why we saw that. Amazon dropped significantly, Amazon stock dropped from 234 all the way down to sub 220, then rallied right back. AI will easily help Amazon with its businesses, plus the cloud, AWS. Using less energy resources. And that's when you start putting all this picture together, you can see who the winners and the losers are going to be. NVIDIA being the big loser with probably a lot more. And what's interesting about NVIDIA stock is NVIDIA themselves, they're releasing their earnings here, I think this week, like Wednesday or Thursday. I know I saw the memo, and I'll check make sure it's not tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's not tomorrow, but I think Wednesday. Google hasn't recovered as much, but could easily. Again, little victories where you're using a lot less resources to earn more dollars. And that's kind of the victory we're seeing here, and who the winners are going to be and who the losers are. Finally, I wanted to take a look at Meta. Mark has said he's investing heavily. I think I saw $68 billion over the course of the next several years. The infrastructure for Meta is absolutely going to be huge. They will, using less resources, earn more. Some of these gains we're seeing right now, Apple and Meta, I don't know that they're going to hold. Some of the losses we're seeing with NVIDIA, we're going to see NVIDIA's earnings this week, and I think NVIDIA stock might bounce a little bit, but I don't see a huge amount of downside that to the point where this is just going to be an avalanche to the downside when it comes to NVIDIA stock continuing lower and lower. So if we do see that, this is something that with NVIDIA's earnings coming up, this is something that I think will probably bottom out with NVIDIA stock for now, and then we're going to start assessing things in the future. Will their revenue growth continue as much as it is? How does this news of DeepSeek shift perceptions? Because right now it's all about AI in the future, meaning earnings in the future. Now all of a sudden those earnings are coming into question, but you do have Meta stock looking pretty nice in that regard. Netflix barely budged. Tesla wasn't even part of it to kind of look at all 7 of these. One more thing I want to look at. This is SQQQ ETF. This is an inverse ETF, inverse to QQQ. So if you're looking to take the opposite direction of QQQ, don't want to get involved in short selling or options, SQQQ ETF is the inverse. And as you can see, QQQ ETF, of course, sold off. SQQQ ETF shot up. This one, I think that we're probably going to see QQQ move higher, so this one would move back down. But we're in earnings season, and we could see some pops higher. Now, the other thing is, we're seeing a transition in the economy. And I wanted to bring up SQQQ ETF at this point because although we've seen some serious gains over the past couple weeks, they seem short-lived. That what's going on is these growth stocks are going to not grow as much given what the Federal Reserve is likely to have to do. We're seeing a lot of inflation. Food prices are not going to go down. We're seeing the Federal Reserve already shift its stance as to where they think they're going to go with interest rates. My take is simply this: no more rate decreases on the short overnight from the Fed, but instead potentially a pivot back upward. At the same time, they need to shrink their balance sheet, which would choke the money supply. If that happens, this economy slows down, and growth stocks themselves will be likely to slow down as well, along with the entire economy. So, should we begin to see QQQ ETF moving back upward again, and you think, you know what, I'm going to take my profits, but I think this thing's going to go down, and you don't want to get involved in selling short or options on QQQ ETF, this is your avenue. You see how SQQQ ETF shoots up like it does when QQQ ETF moves down. Inverse ETFs, I'm gearing up significantly throughout the rest of the first part of this year, like between now and May, that I think we're going to start seeing significant shifts before this summer with the economy and the stock market broadly speaking. I've been looking at inverse ETFs heavily. A lot of my content is going to be geared towards that, so make sure to hit that like and follow button. Also, if you're looking for written content, I've got my Substack link down below and on the end screen here. Make sure to follow me on Substack so you can get my latest information, my written content there. We'll see you in the next video.